Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Adam. Thanks for hanging out with me again today. And today we are going to be building the Tamiya Fast Attack Vehicle. I've wanted one of these for quite a while, and they just look super cool. I also would love to have the shark mouth one, but the camo one is equally as cool. I do like the shark mouth one just a little bit better, but this one is going to be the one we're going to build for right now. So I'm going to crack into this. I'm going to get it all laid out on the bench, kind of give you guys an overview look of it, and then I'm going to get to building. We'll take pictures along the way so you guys can kind of follow along with the build, and then I'll be back at the end once we get done, and I'll let you know if I ran into the issues or just in general how the build went. So, let's kick it off. Well, all right, guys, so we have the buggy all put together, and it looks really, really cool. Now, my only issue with the looks of it is next to impossible to recreate what's on the box. Well, let me rephrase that. It's almost impossible to recreate what's on the box and keep it looking like what is on the box. So on the box, all the roll bars are painted in camo. Pretty much the whole thing is in camo. And you have a nice little seat here and all that stuff. Well, there's no seat over here just by design. And then the roll bars, you technically can paint them, but being that flexible plastic, I know from experience, it's going to chip, peel, crack, flake, everything. So best just to leave the roll bars, the Nerf bars, the bumper, all that stuff without paint. Now on here, the front bumper is black, but the Nerf bars and the roll bars and everything are all painted. If it's only going to be a display piece, sure, go ahead and blast it with the tan and, you know, spray a little bit of streaks of green and black on there and you'll be fine. You know, actually using it, I would avoid painting those flexible black cage pieces and the Nerf bars and go with kind of what you can do. The only thing I did different is I did a little bit of extra painting on the driver figure, and in the manual it tells you to add white into the camo, which technically, you know, the body has white in the camo, but in the picture on the box really doesn't show any white. And I kind of like the woodland camo better without the white, so we just painted him up, you know, brown, green, and black over top of the tan. I didn't paint any of the body panels the tan. This is all the molded tan plastic. Now the green parts here and on the side, and then one of the lights, you have to paint green. You could probably get away without painting the light or the side pieces. Honestly, you're not really going to notice it, but since it was in the manual, I went ahead and painted them green. So I did spend a little bit more time on the driver figure, and you guys saw the up close pictures in there. So you know, some time is needed before you actually start building, because very quickly in the build you need painted parts. So it's best just to go through the manual, figure out what needs to be painted, and start painting right away. One issue I did have, well, there's the ESC had a great benefit and an issue. So if you guys are familiar, the Tamiya kits have been coming with the Hobby Wing 1060s for what, a year and a half, 2 years now. And one of the complaints is they have a very, very short switch wire on there, because in general the Hobby Wing is like, you know, just mount it to the side of the ESC, or, you know, tape it down somewhere close to the ESC. Well, in a Tamiya kits, a lot of times your ESC is up here and your switch is back here or whatever. Now they have extended the wire on the one I got in this one to, you know, 3-4 inches long, so you can move the switch to wherever it needs to go on the buggy. Now, they don't have the old school switch on there that actually screws into the chassis, but luckily with this one, you're able to stick it up to the wall and stick the switch down into the hole. And if you have any small spare hardware, some of the little 1.5 millimeter nuts and bolts and washers, you can run up through the holes, put a washer on it, and basically clamp that switch down. So the switch in there has actually got some double-sided tape sticking it to the wall, and then it has 2 of the small bolts coming up, washers and nuts holding it down. But where you have to put the ESC in this, the motor wires are not long enough. So I could have soldered on longer motor wires and run them all the way inside. But when you're building it, you install all of the insides first, and then at the very end, you're putting the transmission and the motor and all that stuff in. So it made it a little bit more difficult. So all I did was just cut the motor wires coming from the ESC, and I soldered in, you know, a 2.5 inch long extension in there. So the ESC is actually sitting down in here, and then the wires come up and they come out over here, so they will plug in to the motor leads right there. Not a huge deal. Most people are able to cut and solder wires no problem, and putting in, you know, 2.5 inch extensions is not a big deal. But for those that aren't great with soldering, you're either gonna have to buy extension wires or find a motor with very long leads on it or something. A lot of places, your hobby shop will be able to add longer leads to a motor or something like that for you for a fairly reasonable price. But, you know, soldering is not very hard. It's just something that takes a little bit of practice. But for those that aren't into soldering, yes, it can be a very big pain in the butt, because there's no good place to put the ESC other than down in the chassis. When you are putting the ESC in, there are the jumpers on the ESC for LiPo and NIM and forward and brake and forward only, whatever. I had a hard time getting the driver cockpit down in there because those jumpers were sticking up. Now, I could have just cut the jumpers off. You know, you don't have to have the whole flag of that jumper sticking up. You could technically cut off, you know, the top eighth of an inch or so that's hitting and put it anywhere in there. I moved it to where I could cut out a tiny little chunk in between the driver's leg and the interior portion and just fit right. So those little jumper flags are sticking up like that and it just slots right in there. So I can technically still move those flags around. All I do is just take this top lid off and I can move the flags from LiPo to NIM or forward reverse, blah, blah, blah. Something to think about there as well. You know, the Hobby Wing ESCs are great, but they just don't work super well in all the kits. There's usually some little niggly thing about it that, you know, you have to work around. And the little, like I said, those little jumpers are something you have to work around. Like I said, just take a pair of snips, cut the top, you know, eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch off of them, and you should still be able to, you know, effectively jump the leads, but you just take away some of that little flag to grab hold of. Other than that, everything went really well. Now, I do have to commend them on the decals on this. The camo decals came out really, really nice. Now, I could shoot the whole thing in flat clear. I decided not to just because it looks great as is. And with the flat clear, you know, again, I'm going to get it on the roll bars and everything like that because there's no good way of spraying it individually because you really have to spray the chassis and the hood and this piece, so basically fog the whole thing, but not going to. They do have their own trickiness cutting them out. You have some nice hard lines where the stickers start and stop on certain areas. Everything else is a blur, so the blur adds a little bit of difficulty. Normally when you're cutting out your decals, you were trying to cut right up to the edge or right very close to the edge so you don't have a lot of excess clear hanging off the edge that adds a weird line to it. These you have to cut away from the edge because it, like I said, it's a blur, so it's not like it's a white that just stops and you cut right along the side of it. It's a white that fades into nothing, so you're out here kind of cutting in the nothing part. I won't lie, it's like cutting out decals while you're drunk because you're like, it's fuzzy, you know, everything is a blur on those edges, so you're trying to cut just to the outside of the blurry colored edge. It was interesting. It's not hard, but it just kind of goes against everything that you're kind of trained to do of cutting out nice decal lines really straight and really crisp and on the line. These really didn't have lines. Now, putting the decals on, I recommend cutting them all the way out, especially some of the big ones. The small ones you can get away with peeling them and getting them started and laying them down. So like something like this, or even something like these here. These big ones, so like this is all one decal, and then this comes up and these two actually overlap to connect. By cutting them all the way out, you have a hard line on this edge and a hard line on this edge, so you can kind of lay them out and get them positioned exactly where you need, and then just peel up a little bit of like this edge, cut the backing, stick that down, and then work the decal around all the edges and everything, and then everything should line up really nice. Getting them to line up, you know, like here and here, because there's a sticker up here and then you have a sticker down here that lines up with a sticker up here. So just some careful planning and laying them out, it works out really, really well. The ones on the roll bars up here, basically you just cut them all the way out, line up the nice crisp edge with the outside of the bottom of this, stick it, roll it, and then roll it, and it lines up perfectly with the bottom edge here and the bottom edge here. So the decals work very, very, very well. Like I said, it's just like you were a little bit intoxicated cutting them out. Not going to take it out for a run right now, but I can tell you this is going to be a bouncy, bouncy thing. Just the pogo suspension. The rear is very, very hard, and the front is going to be I don't care. This is going to be a non-performance buggy. This is just a cool, fun one to run around and, you know, go back to your G.I. Joe roots as a kid and, you know, go chase down Cobra Commander in your whiskey buggy here. So one thing in the manual, it doesn't say anything about painting this little battery cover back here, which is not used anymore. This was for like your AA, 4 AA batteries to power the receiver back in the day. It's not used anymore. They give you a rubber band to hold it down. Since it's not used, I just put a little bit of E6000 glue on the edges just to glue it down. It is removable if I need to remove it for any reason, but there's just enough glue to hold it down to where I don't have to have a big ugly rubber band holding it down. But sitting behind the driver, it was just this big tan blob. So you get some extra decals on there. So I put one that says Warrior here, and then the Warrior there, and then some of the vehicle numbers. They gave you a military police one. I put that on this back bar just to kind of break up that back bar since it's shiny aluminum. Really didn't have anything up here. And then to give you a fast attack vehicle, I'm assuming most people would put it up on here, but it was kind of pre-bent, so I just put it up on this roll bar up front and took the lighter, quickly warmed it up with the lighter and bent it over, so it looks okay. Not the best in the world, but you know, just something to add a little bit extra to it, because some of the pieces did look kind of plain without the camo paint on there, and I wasn't trying to break out the airbrush and match what's on here. So overall, everything went well. Just some quirky bits about, you know, the extending the wire for the motor on the little machine gun here. It goes together with 2 silver screws, and all I did was once I put it together, I just took some black Sharpie and Sharpied over it. In the pictures, it looks almost purple, but in real life, you know, it has a purplish hue, but looks a whole lot better than having, you know, 2 big silver screws sticking out on the gun. And it's spring loaded, so the gun can bobble and wobble around while you're driving it. And if it does wreck, you know, it's not going to rip the gun off or anything. Well, I mean, if it does, it's just on that spring and you can just screw it back down. That's all I got to say about it, really. I know I said a lot. But this one is more of a looker than a driver. Yes, I'm going to get it out and drive it. We'll have a run video of it, but it's not going to do anything wild and crazy on the track. It's not going to do anything wild and crazy on the grass. It's just going to run around and look cool doing it. But yeah, that's about all I got. Oh, I do have one other tip for you. In your build, you need some O-rings for random places, in the shocks, in the drive cups, and stuff like that. But you end up with 2 spare black O-rings. When you build the front end, when you put the screws down into the shock mounts, put one of the black O-rings on the screw first, then put the screw in, put your black bumper rubber tubing down here, screw everything together. That way you have a little bit of a cushion between that screw and the metal bracket. 2 reasons. One, by the time you put any weight in this, the suspension is already sagged down a little bit to where you're going to have a gap in between the top of that screw and your shock mount here. So adding that little O-ring isn't forcing the front end down at all, and it keeps it from going clank, 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 clank every time the suspension travels up and down. It's going to be noisy anyway because you have that screw kind of sliding in and out of that metal hole anyway, but you don't have that metal to metal smacking as it's running around. So it does quiet it up a lot. It doesn't say anything about it in the manual, but again, you have 2 spare O-rings. Go ahead and use them for the front end, and you'll still have enough for the rest of the vehicle as long as you don't, you know, one doesn't roll off into the eternities. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you liked the up close look at it. We'll have obviously pictures of it up close sitting outside at the end, but you know, we'll get it out and get it run eventually. Until then, everybody out there, you guys be happy, be healthy, be safe, and I will catch you on the next one. See you guys.